My name is Chase, but most people call me Gray, short for Gray Wolf, a nickname I earned in my 30s when I built my first company from nothing. I'm 63 years old, and on a day that was supposed to be about celebration, friendship, and respect. I learned exactly where I stood. It happened in public, with people watching, and with someone who should have stood beside me doing the opposite. One moment, I was speaking. The next, a stranger crossed a line no one expected. What hurt the most wasn't the shock. It wasn't even the humiliation. It was the sound that followed. My wife laughed, not nervously, not awkwardly, but comfortably, as if this moment had been rehearsed long before it ever happened. In that second, years of quiet disrespect suddenly made sense. The side comments, the dismissive looks, the way decisions were made without me, but always about me. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't react the way people expected. Instead, I noticed something no one else did. A look exchanged, a confidence that shouldn't have been there, and a truth that finally clicked into place. That was when I made a decision. Not out of anger, but clarity. Because when someone shows you who they are in front of witnesses, you don't argue. You don't beg. You prepare. I'm going to tell you what led up to that moment, why the laughter mattered more than the act itself, and how a choice I made shortly afterward unraveled a betrayal that had been hidden for years. But before I continue, let me ask you, where are you watching from today? To everyone who's been supporting this channel and sharing your own stories, thank you. Your messages remind me that silence is not strength. And if this is your first time here, take a moment to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. This isn't just a channel. It's a place where dignity is reclaimed. Now, let me tell you what happened after the laughter stopped. The evening started the way these things always do, with string lights, expensive wine, and the kind of small talk that fills the spaces between people who think they know each other. Atlas Morrison was hosting a summer party at his estate in Palo Alto. You know the type of place, professionally landscaped, outdoor kitchen, a view that costs more than most people's mortgages. I'd been to his house maybe a dozen times over the past few years, always at Kaya's insistence. "It's good for us to socialize," she'd say. "You work too much, Chase. We need friends." I didn't particularly enjoy Atlas. He had that Silicon Valley charm, smooth, rehearsed, the kind of guy who name-drops casually and always seems to be closing some deal you've never heard of. But Kaya liked him. Or so I thought. That night, I was standing near the grill talking with Vale Rousseau, Atlas's business partner and one of the few people at these gatherings I actually respected. We were discussing something mundane, real estate trends, I think, when I noticed Kaya across the yard. She was laughing with Atlas and a woman I didn't recognize. Not just polite laughter, the kind that comes easy, natural, the kind she used to share with me before our conversations became logistics and silence. I didn't think much of it. Not then. I turned back to Vale, mid-sentence about interest rates or zoning laws or something equally forgettable, when I felt a presence behind me. Atlas. I turned, expecting him to join the conversation or refill his drink. Instead, he slapped me. Hard. Across the face. The crack echoed across the yard like a branch snapping. Conversation stopped. Music kept playing, but it suddenly felt obscene. My cheek burned. My ears rang. For a second, I couldn't process what had just happened. I stood there, frozen, my mind scrambling to make sense of it. Was this a joke? Some kind of strange party ritual I didn't understand? But Atlas wasn't smiling. He leaned in close, his voice low enough that only I could hear. "Stay out of things that don't concern you, old man." Then he straightened up, adjusted his collar, and walked away. Just like that, as if he'd just corrected a waiter's mistake. I stood there, my face throbbing, my pride crumbling in front of 40 people who suddenly found their shoes, their drinks, their phones infinitely more interesting than my humiliation. And then I heard it. Laughter. I turned. Kaya was laughing. Not a gasp. Not shock. Not the instinctive defense a wife should have when her husband is assaulted in public. No. She was laughing. Her hand covered her mouth, but her eyes, God, her eyes were sparkling, like she'd just heard the punchline to a joke she'd been waiting for all night. Atlas glanced back at her as he walked toward the house, and she followed him. Not immediately, not obviously, but within 30 seconds, she excused herself from her conversation and disappeared inside. Vale touched my arm. "Chase, man, are you okay?" I nodded. I think I nodded. I'm not sure. My face was burning, but not from the slap anymore. From shame. I left the party without saying goodbye to anyone. Walked to my car, got in, and sat there in the darkness for 20 minutes, staring at the steering wheel. My phone buzzed. A text from Kaya. "Where did you go? People are asking." I didn't respond. I drove home in silence, parked in the driveway, and walked into the house we'd shared for 37 years. The house where we'd raised 2 kids. The house that suddenly felt like a museum of a life I didn't recognize anymore. Kaya came home 2 hours later. She didn't apologize, didn't ask if I was okay, just kicked off her heels in the entryway and said, "You embarrassed me tonight." I looked at her. Really looked at her. And for the first time in years, I saw a stranger. "I embarrassed you," I said quietly. She waved her hand dismissively. "Atlas was joking around. You made it awkward by just standing there. He slapped me, Kaya. Oh, don't be dramatic. It was barely a tap." I felt something inside me go cold. Not angry, not heartbroken. Cold. "You laughed," I said. She paused, just for a second, then shrugged. It was awkward. I didn't know what else to do. She went upstairs. I stayed in the living room, staring at nothing, replaying the entire evening in my head. The slap, the laughter, the way she followed him inside. And I realized something. This wasn't the first time she'd chosen him over me. It was just the first time I'd noticed. You think that's bad? You have no idea. What I found in the next 48 hours didn't just explain the slap. It exposed a betrayal so calculated, so deliberate, that it made that moment look like mercy. But I'm not telling you until you're committed. Hit that subscribe button right now. Because the next chapter is where I stopped being the victim and started investigating my own life. And what I found in my own house, in my own bank accounts, made me realize I'd been blind for years. Don't miss this. Subscribe. Now. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Kaya's face. That laugh. That ease. The way she followed Atlas into the house like it was choreographed. By 3 a.m, I was in my home office with a cup of coffee I didn't want and a question I couldn't shake. What am I missing? I pulled up our bank statements. Not because I suspected financial impropriety. Not yet. Just because I needed to do something with the anger vibrating under my skin. At first, everything looked normal. Mortgage, utilities, groceries, the usual rhythm of a life shared for nearly 4 decades. Then I noticed the charges. Small ones, $200 here, $350 there, always coded as retail or dining, but at places I didn't recognize. I cross-referenced them with my calendar. Half of them occurred on days Kaya said she was visiting her sister Cleo in Boston or attending her book club. I kept digging. There was a credit card I'd never seen. Not in her name, well, technically it was, but under her maiden name, which she hadn't used in decades. The statements were going to an email address I didn't recognize. I logged into our phone account. That's when my hands started shaking. Kaya had a second phone number, a line I'd never known existed, buried in our family plan under tablet to avoid suspicion. Hundreds of calls, thousands of texts, all to the same number. I reverse-searched it. Atlas Morrison. My chest tightened. I scrolled through months of records, late-night calls, calls during book club, calls when she was supposedly at Cleo's. I wanted to confront her, wake her up, demand answers. But something stopped me. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was self-preservation. But I knew that if I confronted her now, she'd have time to cover her tracks, to gaslight me, to make me feel crazy for questioning her. So instead, I made a decision. I called a private investigator. Her name was Ash Carrington, former FBI analyst turned private investigator, specializing in infidelity and financial fraud. She had a handshake like a vice grip and a no-nonsense demeanor that made me feel slightly less pathetic for needing her services. "I'll need 3 days," she said after I explained the situation. "Maybe less if they're sloppy." They were sloppy. 36 hours later, Ash called me. "We need to meet, in person." We met at a coffee shop in Menlo Park, far enough from my usual haunts that I wouldn't run into anyone I knew. She slid 2 folders across the table. The first one contained photos, time-stamped, geotagged, clinical in their precision. Kaya and Atlas at a boutique hotel in San Francisco. Kaya and Atlas at a wine bar in Napa. Kaya and Atlas in his car, her hand on his thigh, both of them laughing. Always laughing. I stared at the images, feeling nothing, or maybe feeling everything compressed into a single, cold point of clarity. "How long?" I asked. "Based on phone records and financial patterns? At least 18 months, possibly longer." 18 months. A year and a half of lies. Of book clubs and sister visits and casual dismissals every time I suggested we spend time together. I closed the folder. Ash tapped the second one. "You didn't ask for this, but I thought you should know." I opened it. Inside were financial documents, spreadsheets, bank transfers, corporate filings. Atlas's company, Morrison & Vail Consulting, was drowning. On paper, it looked successful. Impressive client list, sleek branding, high-profile partnerships. But underneath, the numbers told a different story. The company was hemorrhaging cash, bleeding out slowly while maintaining the illusion of profitability. And then I saw it. A shell company I vaguely recognized. One I'd set up years ago for tax purposes and mostly forgotten about. It had invested $250,000 into Morrison & Vail 6 months ago. I never authorized that investment. I looked at Ash. "How is this possible?" She pulled out another document, a form with my signature on it. Except it wasn't my signature. It was close. Damn close. But I could see the differences. The way the C in Chase looped slightly wrong. The way the R didn't quite connect. "Your wife forged your signature," Ash said flatly. "She moved $250,000 of your money into her boyfriend's failing business without your knowledge or consent." I sat back in my chair, staring at the evidence. This wasn't just an affair. This was a con. And I was the mark. "What do you want to do?" Ash asked. I looked at her, then at the folders, then out the window at people walking by, living normal lives, unaware that mine had just imploded. "I want to know everything," I said. "Every lie, every transaction, every secret they think they've hidden." Ash nodded. "That'll take more time, and more money." "I don't care," I said. "Find it all." She stood up, shook my hand again. "I'll be in touch." I sat there for another hour after she left, staring at the folders. Kaya came home that evening and asked me how my day was. "Fine," I said. "Yours?" "Good. Lunch with Cleo. She sends her love." I smiled, nodded, kissed her on the cheek, and went back to my office to keep digging. Because now I knew the truth. And knowledge I was about to learn is the most dangerous weapon of all. For 3 days, I played the perfect fool. I smiled at breakfast, made coffee the way Kaya liked it, asked about her day, laughed at her stories about book club, stories I now knew were fabricated, every single word. She had no idea I was watching her, studying her, cataloging every lie. Meanwhile, Ash was building my case. Phone records, financial statements, hotel receipts, email exchanges pulled from cloud backups Kaya didn't know existed. But it was what Ash found on day 4 that changed everything. She called me at 7 in the morning. "We need to talk. Now." 20 minutes later, I was back at that same coffee shop in Menlo Park. Ash didn't waste time. She opened her laptop and turned it toward me. "Morrison and Vail isn't just failing," she said. "It's a house of cards. Atlas has been lying to investors for 2 years, inflating revenue projections, hiding losses. Your $250,000 isn't the only illegal investment he's solicited." She showed me a list of names, people I recognized, respected business owners, retired executives, people who'd trusted Atlas with their money. "He's been running a slow-motion Ponzi scheme," Ash continued, "using new investments to pay old debts while skimming off the top, and your wife has been helping him cover it up." I stared at the screen. "How do you know she's involved?" Ash pulled up an email thread. Messages between Kaya and Atlas discussing paperwork and keeping things clean. One email from Kaya read, "Make sure the quarterly reports look solid. Vail can't know until we're ready." Vail, Atlas's business partner, my friend for 20 years. "Does Vail know?" I asked. "I don't think so," Ash said. "From what I can tell, Atlas has been keeping him in the dark. Vail handles operations and client relations. Atlas handles the books." I sat back in my chair, pieces clicking into place. Vail Rousseau wasn't just Atlas's partner. He was a good man, honest, the kind of person who'd lose sleep over a miscalculation on an expense report. If he found out what Atlas had been doing, what Kaya had been helping him do, he'd be devastated. But he'd also be furious. And fury, I was learning, could be useful. "I need to talk to Vail," I said. Ash closed her laptop. "Are you sure? The fewer people who know what you're planning—" "Vail isn't people," I said. "He's the key to bringing Atlas down." That afternoon, I texted Vail. "Can we grab lunch? Need your perspective on something." He responded within minutes. "Of course. Thursday work? Today would be better. Everything okay?" "Not really. I'll explain when I see you." We met at a quiet Italian place in Los Altos. Vail was already there when I arrived, concern written all over his face. "Chase, what's going on? You look—" He trailed off. "Tired?" I offered. "That's because I haven't slept in a week." I slid a manila folder across the table. "I need you to look at this, all of it, and then I need you to tell me what you know." Vail opened the folder. I watched his expression shift from confusion to horror as he flipped through bank statements, email printouts, and financial audits. He looked up at me, pale. "Where did you get this?" "Does it matter?" "Chase, this is—" He ran a hand through his hair. "This is fraud, securities fraud. If this is real, Atlas could go to prison." "It's real," I said quietly, "and it gets worse." I told him about Kaya, about the affair, about the forged signature and the $250,000. Vail closed the folder and sat back, looking like he might be sick. "I had no idea," he said finally, "about any of it. I knew the numbers weren't adding up. I've been asking Atlas about discrepancies for months, but he always had explanations. Always made it sound like I was being paranoid." "He's been gaslighting you," I said, "the same way Kaya's been gaslighting me." Vail looked at me, and I saw something I recognized in his eyes. Betrayal, the kind that comes from trusting someone who never deserved it. "What are you going to do?" he asked. "I'm going to destroy them," I said, "but I can't do it alone. I need access to Morrison and Vail's internal records, real numbers, real contracts, everything Atlas has been hiding from you." Vail was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached across the table and shook my hand. "Tell me what you need." Over the next week, Vail became my inside man. He copied files, forwarded emails, gave me access to the company's actual financial statements. Not the doctored versions Atlas showed investors. The evidence was damning. Falsified reports, phantom clients, money moving in circles designed to create the illusion of profit while the company bled out. And through it all, Kaya's digital fingerprints were everywhere. Emails to Atlas coordinating stories, texts about keeping Chase in the dark, a shared cloud drive labeled contingency that contained forged documents, offshore account numbers, and a timeline. A timeline for my destruction. They'd been planning this for 18 months, slowly draining my assets, positioning me to take the fall if anything went wrong, setting up a divorce where Kaya would walk away with millions while I was left broke and humiliated. But they'd made one critical mistake. They'd underestimated me. I wasn't the helpless old man Atlas had slapped at that party. I was a man who'd built 3 companies from nothing, who'd survived cancer, market crashes, and hostile takeovers. And I was about to remind them both what that meant. Revenge, I've learned, is about timing. Strike too early and your target has time to recover. Strike too late and you've given them too much power. But strike at exactly the right moment, when they're comfortable, confident, convinced they've won. And you can dismantle an entire life in a single evening. That's what I was counting on. With Vale's help, I had everything I needed. Financial records proving Atlas's fraud, email evidence of Kaya's complicity, testimony from investors who'd been lied to, documentation of the forged signature. I could have gone to the authorities immediately, filed charges, let the legal system grind them both into dust. But that felt too clean, too impersonal. I wanted them to see it coming, to understand exactly what they'd lost and who'd taken it from them. So I did something unexpected. I invited them to dinner, at our house. I sent the text to Kaya first. Let's have Atlas and Vale over Saturday night. I think it's time we cleared the air. She responded immediately. What do you mean? I mean, that party was awkward for everyone. I'd like to move past it. Fresh start. There was a long pause. Then, are you serious? Completely. Invite Atlas. I'll handle Vale. Let's be adults about this. Another pause. Then, okay, I'll ask him. She was suspicious, I could tell from the delay in her responses, but also intrigued. Maybe even relieved that I was letting it go. She had no idea what I was actually letting go of. Vale, of course, knew exactly what we were doing. When I called him, he was quiet for a moment before saying, "This is going to be brutal, isn't it?" "Absolutely," I said. "Good." Saturday arrived. I spent the day preparing, not food, but documents. Ash delivered 3 leather portfolios, each containing carefully organized evidence. 1 for Kaya, 1 for Atlas, 1 for the lawyers. Kaya spent the day cooking, humming to herself, completely unaware that she was preparing her last meal as my wife. Atlas arrived at 6:30, bottle of wine in hand, that familiar confident smile plastered across his face. "Chase," he said, extending his hand. "Glad we're doing this. That party got out of hand." I shook his hand, smiled. Water under the bridge. Kaya appeared from the kitchen, kissed Atlas on the cheek, right in front of me, bold as daylight, and took the wine. Vale arrived 5 minutes later. He looked nervous, but Atlas didn't notice. He was too busy holding court in my living room, telling some story about a client meeting, making Kaya laugh. That laugh. The same one from the party. We sat down to dinner. Kaya had made coq au vin, my favorite, ironically, and for 20 minutes we engaged in the kind of shallow conversation that defines these gatherings. Real estate, politics, someone's kid getting into Stanford. I let it play out. Let them relax. Let Atlas refill his wine glass 3 times. Then, as Kaya was clearing the appetizer plates, I said, "Actually, before we move on, there's something I'd like to discuss." Atlas looked up. "Oh?" I stood and walked to the sideboard where I'd placed the portfolios. "I've been doing some thinking since that party," I said, returning to the table. "About trust, about partnership, about what it means to really know someone." I placed a portfolio in front of Atlas, another in front of Kaya. "What is this?" Kaya asked, her smile faltering. "Open them," I said. "Please." Atlas opened his first. I watched the color drain from his face as he saw the first page. A financial audit of Morrison & Vail, highlighting every falsified report, every phantom transaction, every lie he'd told investors. Kaya opened hers more slowly. Inside was a timeline. 18 months of phone records, hotel receipts, text message screenshots, forged documents bearing my signature. The room went silent except for the sound of pages turning. Finally, Atlas looked up. "Chase, I can explain." "No," I said quietly. "You can't, because there's no explanation that makes this acceptable. You've been defrauding investors for 2 years. You solicited illegal investments, including $250,000 of my money that my wife stole and funneled to you." Kaya's hands were shaking. "Chase, please." "And you," I turned to her, "have been having an affair with him for at least 18 months while systematically draining our accounts and forging my signature on legal documents." Atlas stood up. "Now, wait just a—" The doorbell rang. I walked to the door and opened it. 2 attorneys and a forensic accountant stepped inside. Behind them, looking uncomfortable but resolute, were 3 of Morrison & Vail's investors, people Atlas had lied to, people whose retirement savings he'd jeopardized. I turned back to the dining room. "You have 2 choices," I said. "Option 1. You sign the settlements my attorneys prepared. Kaya, you walk away from this marriage with nothing. No alimony, no assets. You return every penny you stole, and you cooperate fully with the investigation into Atlas's fraud. Atlas, you dissolve Morrison & Vail, surrender your business licenses, and make restitution to every investor you defrauded. Vail will buy out your share at a price determined by an independent audit, which, as you can imagine, won't be favorable." "And option 2? Atlas asked, his voice tight. "Option 2 is I hand all of this evidence to the district attorney on Monday morning, and you both face criminal charges. Securities fraud, forgery, embezzlement. You'll spend the next decade in legal battles that will bankrupt you, humiliate you, and very likely end with prison time." The room was silent. Kaya was crying now, mascara running down her face. Atlas looked like a trapped animal. Vail sat quietly, watching them both with an expression I couldn't quite read. Disappointment, maybe, or vindication. "You have until midnight tonight to decide," I said. "The attorneys will be waiting." I walked out of my own dining room, leaving them there with the wreckage of their lies. I stood on the back porch looking out at the garden Kaya had planted years ago and felt nothing but cold, clear certainty. This wasn't the end, but it was the beginning of the end. And I was finally in control. They didn't sign that night. Not immediately. Atlas sat at my dining room table for 40 minutes, reading through the settlement documents with the kind of focus you'd expect from a man watching his entire life collapse in real time. Kaya didn't read hers. She just stared at me, tears streaming down her face waiting for me to blink, to soften, to give her an opening to negotiate. I didn't. The attorneys waited patiently. The investors shifted uncomfortably in my living room. Vail sat silent, his jaw tight. Finally, Atlas put down the pen he'd been holding and looked at me. "Before I sign this," he said quietly, "there's something you need to know." "There's nothing I need to know from you," I said. "It's about Talia." The room went cold. My daughter's name, spoken by this man in this moment, felt like a violation. "Don't," I said, my voice low. "Don't you dare bring my daughter into this." "She's not just your daughter," Atlas said. Kaya made a sound, something between a gasp and a sob. I looked at her, then back at Atlas. "What are you talking about?" He took a breath. 27 years ago, before you and Kaya were married, we had a relationship. Brief, just a few months. She broke it off when you proposed." My heart was pounding now, but I kept my voice steady. That has nothing to do with— 9 months later, Atlas continued, Talia was born. The world tilted. I gripped the back of the chair I was standing behind. You're lying, I said. I'm not, Atlas said. He looked at Kaya. Tell him. Kaya was sobbing now, her face in her hands. Kaya. My voice didn't sound like mine. Tell me he's lying. She looked up at me, mascara streaking her cheeks, and said nothing. That silence was the loudest sound I'd ever heard. I didn't know, she finally whispered. Not at first. I hoped she was yours. But when she turned 5, I started seeing things. The way she smiled, her mannerisms. I did a paternity test when she was 7, without telling you. And, the word barely made it past my throat, Atlas is her biological father. The room spun. I sat down hard in the chair, my legs suddenly unable to hold me. 27 years. My daughter, my brilliant, beautiful Talia, who had my eyes, my drive, my stubborn refusal to quit, wasn't mine. Does she know? I asked. No, Kaya said quickly. God, no. Chase, she can't ever know. It would destroy her. I looked at Atlas. And you? When did you find out? 5 years ago, he admitted. Kaya told me. We reconnected at a conference. That's when everything started. 5 years ago. 5 years of knowing he had a daughter he'd never claimed. 5 years of watching me raise her, pay for her education, walk her through heartbreaks and triumphs. 5 years of betrayal stacked on top of 22 years of lies. I stood up and walked to the window, my back to all of them. Behind me, one of the attorneys cleared his throat. Mr. Chase, do you need a moment? No, I said. I turned around. I need the truth, all of it, right now. Kaya started talking. The whole story spilled out in a rush of words and tears. She and Atlas had dated before she met me. When I proposed, she panicked. Atlas wasn't ready for commitment, and I was stable, successful, safe. She chose security over passion. When she got pregnant, she genuinely didn't know who the father was. She convinced herself it was me, because that's what she needed to believe. The paternity test at 7 years old confirmed her fears, but by then, what could she do? Talia thought I was her father. I thought I was her father. Destroying that truth would hurt everyone. So she buried it. Until 5 years ago, when she ran into Atlas at a business conference. They talked, had drinks. She told him the truth. And instead of walking away, instead of leaving well enough alone, they started an affair. We were going to tell you, Kaya said. Eventually, when the time was right, when Talia was older, when you'd already taken everything from me, I finished. She flinched but didn't deny it. I looked at the attorneys, at Vale, at the investors standing awkwardly in my living room. Then I looked at Atlas and Kaya. Here's what's going to happen, I said, my voice unnaturally calm. You're both going to sign those settlements. Tonight, you're going to return every penny you stole. You're going to cooperate with every investigation, and you're going to stay completely, permanently out of my life. Chase, Kaya started. I'm not finished, I said. Talia will never know about this. Not from me. Not from you. Not from anyone in this room. She deserves a father who chose her, who loved her, who showed up for every single moment of her life. And that's me. Biology doesn't change 27 years of reality. I turned to Atlas. You gave up the right to call yourself her father the moment you chose to destroy her family instead of protecting it. If you ever try to contact her, if you ever tell her the truth, I will make the criminal charges I'm holding back look like a mercy. Atlas opened his mouth, then closed it. As for you, I looked at Kaya, you'll sign a post-nuptial agreement as part of this settlement stating that you relinquish all parental rights to influence Talia's relationship with me. You'll tell her we're divorcing due to irreconcilable differences. Nothing more. She doesn't need to know her mother is a thief and a liar. But she's my daughter too, Kaya whispered. Then you should have thought of that before you spent 18 months planning to destroy her father. One of the attorneys stepped forward with the documents. Atlas signed first. His hand shook, but he signed. Kaya stared at the papers for a long time before finally picking up the pen. As she signed her name, she looked at me one last time. I did love you, Chase. Once. I know, I said. That's what makes this so much worse. They left separately. Atlas first, escorted out by one of the investors who had some choice words for him. Kaya gathered her purse and walked to the door without looking back. When everyone was gone except Vale, he put a hand on my shoulder. Are you okay? I thought about that question. Really thought about it. No, I said honestly, but I will be. 6 months later, I was standing on a beach in Portugal. The divorce was finalized. Kaya walked away with nothing but the clothes in her closet and a lifetime of regret. Atlas lost Morrison and Vale, his reputation, and his business license. Vale restructured the company, made restitution to the investors, and offered me a consulting position. I declined. I didn't want to be that person anymore. The man who built empires and measured success in quarterly earnings. So I traveled. Europe first, Spain, Italy, Greece, then Southeast Asia. I sat in cafes, wrote in journals, talked to strangers who didn't know my name or my story, and slowly, painfully, I rebuilt myself from the inside out. Talia called me every week. She knew about the divorce. Kaya had told her we'd grown apart, but she didn't know the truth, and she never would. Not from me. Dad, are you okay? She asked during one call. You sound different. I am different, I told her. But in a good way, I think. Mom says you're having a midlife crisis. I laughed. Maybe, but if traveling the world and figuring out who I am counts as a crisis, I'll take it. She visited me in Barcelona. We spent 3 days walking the streets, eating tapas, talking about her dissertation on environmental policy. I watched her laugh at a street performer and my chest ached. She had Kaya's smile, Atlas's mannerisms, but she had something else too. Resilience, kindness, a fierce sense of justice. And those things, those came from me, from 27 years of showing up, of helping with homework, of teaching her to ride a bike and change a tire and stand up for herself. Biology didn't make me her father. Choice did. On her last night in Barcelona, we sat on my apartment balcony watching the sunset. I'm proud of you, Dad, she said quietly. For what? For not falling apart, for choosing yourself. Mom said you'd be bitter, but you're not. You're free. I looked at my daughter, regardless of DNA, and realized she was right. I was free. Free from the weight of a marriage built on lies. Free from the performance of being someone I'd stopped recognizing. Free from needing validation from people who'd never valued me. 3 weeks after Talia left, I got a text from an unknown number. I'm sorry. It was Kaya. I stared at it for a long time. Thought about responding. Thought about telling her exactly how much damage she'd caused. Instead, I typed, I know. Then I deleted her contact. Not out of anger, out of peace. Because here's what I learned through all of this. Revenge isn't about destroying the people who hurt you. It's about refusing to let them keep hurting you. Atlas lost his company and his reputation. Kaya lost her marriage and her integrity. But I didn't lose myself. I found myself. I found the man who'd been buried under years of obligation and performance and quiet disappointment. I found someone who could sit alone in a foreign country and feel completely, utterly content. That slap at Atlas's party didn't break me. It freed me. And, in the end, that was the greatest revenge of all. Not needing revenge anymore, just needing peace. And finally, at 63 years old, I had it. That's how it ends. Not with destruction, not with bitterness, but with a man who walked through fire and came out the other side whole. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that dignity is a choice and peace is something you build, not something you're given, then do something for me. Subscribe to this channel. Like this video. Share it with someone who needs to hear that it's never too late to reclaim yourself. Because there are more stories like this. Stories of people who refused to stay broken, who chose themselves when no one else would. Hit that subscribe button and join me for the next one. And to everyone who's been here from the beginning, thank you. Your comments, your messages, your stories have reminded me why I started telling mine. This is a community of people who understand that silence isn't strength, but speaking your truth is. I'll see you in the next chapter. Until then, choose yourself. Always.